Hey guys, welcome back to another video. As promised, today I'm going to be going through my what's in my bag, and it is my wedding bag. So this is everything that I take when I am delivering a wedding cake. This is my first wedding cake bag, so obviously as I grow and as I do more weddings there may be things that I add to it that I think are essential, but these are just the things that I took to my first wedding. So get your notepad out, make some notes on what I took, and hopefully this will be informative for you guys. If you have anything to add that you think that I should take, then feel free to put it in the comments below, because I'm always open to suggestions. I didn't find that I needed anything else, but you may suggest that it's something that makes my life easier, so definitely feel free to just mention it down below. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and make sure that you go and follow me on Instagram, which is @sweetthingsbyamy, and I also have a podcast which is the Cake Diaries on Spotify. And let's get right into the video. So the bag that I took was just a little canvas bag. I actually quite liked taking this. I will be doing branded tote bags soon. I'm actually wearing, sorry it's not ironed, didn't have time, but I'm wearing one of my logo t-shirts, which is on my website as merch if you want to go and get yourself one. But I'm going to be making tote bags, so I need to order them, and then I'm going to be doing all the promos, so like testing all the stock, doing all the designs. There are new merch designs coming soon as well. Over the next couple of weeks I am designing them all, and then they will be coming out probably. I might do like a birthday launch, so bring it out in August, ready for my birthday in August. So this is the tote bag that I used, but like I say, gonna be selling my own soon. And it's just because it's nice and big, and it's also thin enough that it's not too like stiff to fit everything in, because there is quite a lot of stuff. And it also means that if it gets any like remnants in it of like buttercream, anything like that, then it's easy to wash. Whereas you don't want to take like your best handbag or something, because then if anything happens to it you're going to be regretting it. Whereas this is easy to wash afterwards, so yeah, it's just very handy to use. So I've got everything out for us, and I'm just going to dive right in and explain what I use everything for, so that you know the purpose of me taking it, and if you do a different style of cake then you can always take those things out and use something else. So number one, pretty universal, but you need kitchen towel. This is because when you're stacking cakes, because I stacked on site, so I did the third layer, the third tier of the cake on site, you need to be having stuff to clean up basically. So I have kitchen towel, and then I also have anti-bac wipes. Depending on what you're using it for, obviously you can't use anti-bac on anything to do with the cake, so like I wouldn't use it on a cake board, but I would wet this, or I can use it dry and use it on a cake board. But this I might use if I've made a mess in the kitchen of the venue, then I can just wipe it up if you can't get hold of any cleaning products, because like the one that I went to, it was self-catering, so I couldn't necessarily just like search around for stuff, so that's why I brought my own. But this is super handy because when you're flipping cakes over, you may get buttercream on your hands, or you may get it on the sides or on your spatulas. So rather than having to go and wash them, you can just wipe them clean, and then they can go back in your bag and they're not going to get any mess anywhere. So it's just super easy, quick, yeah, light as well, super light. I didn't take the whole roll, I just took a few bits off, but obviously I don't want to take any bits off of here because I'm not going to use them. So first one is kitchen roll, the second one is anti-bac wipes. You can use these on your hands after you're done, or on the sides like the surfaces if you make it dirty. Then we have a couple of things, it depends whether you're doing buttercream or fondant. So we have a spatula and we have a scraper. So these are obviously for buttercream, so you can just take any scraper, doesn't matter which one, just as long as it's got a straight side, or whatever design the cake is. So if it's a scallop cake, then obviously take a scallop one. So this is if in transport you get any dents in your cake, if it knocks up against the box. I know that in the car on the way for the first cake, my first wedding cake that I did, the top tier, because it was on a tiny little board which wasn't the same size, which was the same size as the cake, I found that it slid around a little bit. So when I got there was one slight dent at the top from where it had touched the box. So what I did is got my scraper out, just scraped it smooth, and it was perfectly fine. Obviously it depends what the cake design is. This was a naked cake, so luckily I could do that, but if it had some kind of design on it, then I might not have been able to. But a scraper is definitely useful. It can also be used on the top. If you have any dents on the top of the cake or the side, you can just smooth them out, nice and easy. And yeah, it's just simple to take. And yeah, like I say, you can take any scraper. It doesn't have to be any particular style. And then we have our palette knife. This is for when you're stacking the cake. So when I was stacking the last layer on top, I needed to put buttercream in between the board and the second tier so that the board will stick to the second tier. So what you do is then you use your palette knife, smooth it out, and then you put it back in your bag and you're done. So that's what I use that one for. This is for if you're taking a fondant cake. I didn't need this, but I've just got it out for reference. But if you do fondant cakes, you'll probably need one of these. And this is a little smoother, and this one's just from Hobbycraft. I'll actually mention where things are from in a minute, but yeah, this one's from Hobbycraft, and it's just a fondant smoother, so that if you need to re-smooth, if there's any bulges from where it's got hot in the car, then you can just re-smooth it out with this. The palette knife, this one is just anyone. I think this one's from Tesco's. The scraper is of course Finch Bakery, and the wipes that I have are from B&M, and then the kitchen roll you can get from anywhere. Then we have some flower tape. Again, this depends on the design, but mine had flowers on it. I wasn't aware whether they were artificial or real, so I took some flower tape because real flowers, the sap can't go into the cake. Even if it isn't poisonous, it will change the taste of the cake and potentially not make it taste very nice. So you want to cut the stems and then wrap them in flower tape. So this is what it looks like, and it is from Hobbycraft, and yeah, you just wrap the stems. So they were actually artificial flowers in the end, so I didn't need this. You sometimes need it if they have wire. These ones luckily were just plastic ends on the kind of like flower buds, but if they are wire, then you'll want to wrap it, because sometimes the wire can either affect the taste potentially because it's like aluminium wire that's going in there, or I worry that it might splinter, or it's just so that it's not a sharp end when they take it out and they might potentially cut themselves. So it just softens the end that is going into the cake, but not all of them have wire, so you might not need it. But it's definitely something that is good to take just in case you get there and your flowers aren't artificial and you need to wrap them. The next thing is some piping bags. So usually I don't have one prepped, but you will take buttercream that matches the colour of the layers, so you will have that. And then I took 2 spare piping bags, because then if I needed to distribute the icing into another piping bag and use a nozzle, then you can. I didn't need any nozzles, but I did need to cut a tiny hole in the piping bag and then pipe around the different tiers to hide any little gaps between the boards. So I needed another bag because my other one was for doing in between the tiers, so it needed a big hole, so I've already cut that, and then I put it in another piping bag and cut a little hole. So always take some spares just so that you can use different nozzles, cut it to different sizes if you need. So I took about 5, but I've just got 2 here for example, and these are just off anywhere, Amazon, eBay, they're just standard piping bags. And then I took some of these. These are from IKEA, and they are little food bag clips, but they do work with piping bags, as you can see. If it will focus, they're from IKEA, and they just clip onto your piping bag. So I did this because obviously the piping bags are open, so at the top I filled one and then I squished it like so, put the clip around the top and then didn't cut the end, so that it's sealed in my bag, because obviously you don't want it to get buttercream everywhere. And it also saves you taking a box of buttercream. Some people might take a container with buttercream in, but then you still have to take that and also the utensils to get it out of there and put it in the piping bag. So I just put it straight into the piping bag at home, and then I didn't have to take all the extra stuff. So yeah, these little clips are perfect, and they're also just good for like ingredients at home. I love them. There are bigger ones. It's a set, so you get medium ones which are about here, and then you get large ones which are about there. So I have loads of those, and they're really, really good. The next thing is scissors, because surprisingly enough, I thought that I wasn't going to need these because I assumed the venue would have them. And then it turns out that everyone was asking me for my scissors, so they ended up getting quite a lot of use. But yeah, these are good for when you're cutting the flowers that are going on around the cake, if you need to cut any tags off of anything, because I had a cake topper that was going on there, and it had all these tapes on it, and the bag that it was in needed to be cut to be opened. So these are very, very useful, and it's just something that you should always take, I think, is scissors, because you never know when you're going to need them. So the next thing is a knife. So this is always useful if you need to re-smooth out the top of your cake. I always put mine in the fridge and then cut it. So I get a knife, a sharp knife, and cut the edges of the cake. This is around the top so that they're nice and flat. So if you did need to re-ice your cake, then you can just use your sharp knife and cut round the top. It's also just good for cutting off any excess. I use it to clean the board. So if you go, I've actually got a board here, but if you go like this around the board where the cake is, obviously, then you can get all of that just buttercream that's been smoothed onto the board. You can get that off nice and easy. So I always use a sharp knife to do that. So just any knife, kitchen knife, a sharp one, but yeah, it doesn't really matter what one it is. Then moving on to the next thing, we have some spare boards. So I don't have the smaller ones because obviously I use them for the cake, but I did have a 4-inch one which I put on the top of the 4-inch cake, and then I shimmied the bottom onto this one which is a 6-inch. Then I held the top of the 4-inch cake, flipped it over, took this one off, held the board that was already under it, flipped it back over, put it over the skewer that goes down the middle of the cake, and then took the top board off, and it's done. So you always want spare boards for flipping, because otherwise you can't flip the cake. You won't be able to use parchment paper because you'll get fingerprints in the top of the cake where you've smoothed it, whereas this is a flat surface, so you can flip it over, and then if you did find that it sticks to the top of the cake, you can cut it off with your sharp knife. But you don't want to be using your hands, because even if you do have gloves on, they're going to be too warm probably, and they will indent your cake. So these boards are from Amazon. They are kind of like wooden corkboard style. They're nothing too fancy, and they're just easy for swapping cakes over on different boards. The next thing, which is useful, is a cake lifter. This one is from the range. I never used to use it, but I've definitely been using it recently because I've been doing a lot of tiered cakes where they're 2 or 3 tiers. So this is very useful. As you can see at the end here, it does go down, if it will focus. So it goes down at the end, which allows you to get under the cake and kind of like shimmy it up, and then once it's under, it allows you to hold the top and move it around if you need to. I usually just use it to move onto different boards. I don't usually use this when I'm actually stacking like so, because I worry that this is a little bit flimsy, even though it's not that it's gonna fall, it's more that I might not shimmy it correctly, whereas if I can hold the base of the board and then use the top board to hold onto, then I can just level it onto the skewer as the top tier. So I find that that works nice and easy. Then we have some cling film, because I cover all my boxes in cling film because I leave them open, especially when you're doing tiered cakes. I use the lid to stick to the back of the box, so I staple it, and then I have cling film going over the front like so. But always take some spare just in case you find in the car that you need a bit extra, or if you need to wrap anything up afterwards. So I found that because I had some leftover buttercream and the bag was open because I cut it, I just wrapped it in cling film, and then it meant that the buttercream didn't come out of the bag. So super useful. You can get it from any supermarket. So the next thing is just a little notebook. Mine is very snazzy, but it doesn't matter what one you take. I took this because it had the pricing of the cake, and it also had the style. So I had a image in here. I've ripped it out now, but because I take out all the things so that I have plain pages, because I don't know, I'm just weird like that. I like to take out pages once they're done. But yeah, I just use it to draw a rough style of the cake, have any details about it, any toppings that are meant to go on it. I do have an order book as well, which is a more formal version, but this is just for any notes that I need to write down. If it was like I need to be there for 2 p.m. and then we're setting up from 2 till 2:30, then I can just write it in this book so that I can take it on the day. So you want to take a pen as well if you have any notes that you need to either take or write down when you get there. So the next thing is some tape, because when you're putting cling film over anything you might need to tape it, especially if it is on a cake box. Then I would definitely recommend taking some tape, and it's just always good to have. I feel like it's something like if you need to fix something you can put tape on it, so if something happened to the cake box then you could always put tape on it. The last thing, which I don't actually have in front of me, is some gloves, because I found that when you're putting toppings on it's always good to have gloves because you're getting very close to the cake, and obviously it is a wedding cake, and if you don't necessarily have access to wash your hands very frequently, like this self-catering one, they had a sink but it was for the kitchen. So I anti-backed my hands and then I put gloves on so that obviously the gloves were clean, so then I can use those to put the roses on the cake and then take them off and we're all done. I think it's just good to have just in case you don't have those hand washing facilities. So then if you haven't got access to it, then you can just put gloves on so that you know your hands are nice and clean. So yeah, I took some gloves. I took 4 just in case any of them were broken or had holes in, or if I just needed more. So always take more than you need. I also took a face mask, but again, this won't necessarily be compulsory in a few months' time. This was just during the current situation in England. You do require PPE, so I had to take a face mask. I took 2 just in case I lost one, so I wore that whilst I was decorating the cake because there were people running around me in the venue doing various things, so I obviously wasn't on my own, so I needed to make sure that I was wearing it. But I think that was everything. I did have cake boxes, which obviously the cakes were in, so that wasn't something that I took extra in my bag, but I had 3 cake boxes, 1 for each tier. I had one that was spare because I didn't end up using it because I did stack 2 of the layers. That was pretty much everything. I took some spare gold leaf, but this depends on the design. I did use the last of it, so I've had to do a little order, that's why we haven't got it today. But I took some spare gold leaf because the gold leaf was on the cake, so I wanted to take some spare just in case I wanted to add a little bit more, or you can also use it to cover any like air bubbles. If you thought, oh, there's a little air bubble there, I want to cover that, then you can just put a little bit of gold leaf on it and it's all sorted. So it's definitely good to take with you just in case you need it. So anything relating to the design I'd recommend taking. So like I say, it had gold leaf on it, so I took that, but anything in regards to the design I'd recommend taking. I also took some skewers and jumbo straws. Again, I don't have any of those with me right this second, but jumbo straws are like normal plastic straws which are used for the structure of the 3 tiers. So I took spare ones of those just in case the cake was looking a little bit wobbly and I felt like I needed to add another one in, then I could. And I also took another skewer, again just in case I needed it for the 3rd tier. So I took 2, one to go through the top tier that is going on top of the 2nd tier because it was a 3-tier cake, and then I took a spare one just in case I lost that one. So that is so that it's not wobbly and the cake, obviously the tier doesn't fall off. So yeah, like I said, I took a spare one just so that I can add to the structure once it's there and once it's actually stacked and built. But yeah, it's always good to take spares of just everything that the cake has in it, just so that if you do need to add anything on or redo anything, if it gets damaged in transport, then you've got it all there for you. So that is everything that I took to my wedding, and I hope you enjoyed that and you might have found some things that you didn't think to take, or if you're just starting out you can make notes, and then when you do your first wedding you can use these notes to pack your bag. So yeah, I hope you found that useful. It was asked after the last video and I had mentioned it in it, so I thought that I would make sure to upload it as soon as, just in case people were doing wedding cakes very soon. So yeah, I hope that was useful and I will see you in my next video. Bye!